So our next challenge is about staying on brand at scale and trying to tell the story everywhere. That's going to be a lot of the theme of today in different ways. And so it's my pleasure to introduce Sherry Huss, who heads community for Freeman Company and was one of the founders of Maker Faire and her group. Come on board.
Yeah. Well, good morning, everyone. How are you doing today? Good, yay. Well, we have a really interesting panel on storytelling. And, my first thought is, it's been 30 years since I came down to Cupertino almost every week, because my first event ever in this industry was Java 1. And so it's kind of really great to be back in the neighborhood here. Doing a little bit of research, I looked up Kurt Vonnegut's models for storytelling, which is interesting, based on beginning and end and character fortune. But I really think what kind of strikes me with this is really what shapes it is how we connect, learn, and kind of make sense of the world with storytelling. So we hope that we're going to take on the challenge today. And I'd like to start introducing our panel, but we're going to do that with a video. So first up is John, and let's run John's video.
When I have somebody like Dr. Gupta who is willing to take the time, not just to get to know my son, but to work with him to figure out what is the bone issue with Crohn's patients, gives me high hopes. It's difficult to not know what tomorrow brings for your son. And my hope is that he can just grow old. He can live his life and that he'll just grow old. As a family, we take today. Whatever today brings us is what we deal with, and we worry about tomorrow when it gets here.
Great, thank you. John, welcome. We'll have you introduce yourself.
Thanks for having me here today. I'm John Hubbell. I'm the CEO of, story so nice you heard it twice. I do editorial strategy and brand storytelling in tech and science and other places where those things intersect. I am a Bay Area native, fourth generation Californian, and I was a teenager when Apple's 1984 ad came out, and so I'm probably somebody shaped by that, and had a Mac SE30 in my dorm room, so Apple has loomed large in my life, and I think the idea of that always being a people story, as technology being created by cool people who I admired and who really shaped and invigorated us and thought about where we could go. When we think about having an image problem that tech somewhat has in certain ways now, that kind of disheartens me because I've always seen it as the opposite. I see it as a very California story. It's part of my name, my company, obviously, but I see it as a human story and also a diversity story and also a very West Coast story where, people come to reinvent themselves. I think that's still very much what we see today. And I think that I try to advocate as much authenticity and bringing it back to people as we can. I'd like to talk with you more about that today. So thanks for having me.
Great, thanks, John. Mark, welcome. Maybe we could run Mark's video.
I believe the key of a chef is to cook with your heart and bring to the table something different, something unique. Going back to the simplicity, to the root of the cuisine, to enhance the natural flavor of an ingredient. Can you present the vegetable in a way that the guests will be wow? Yes, we can. Everything has to be in season and everything has to be balanced. Really well. Inside the hotel, there is a beautiful farm-to-table restaurant, and I'm very proud of that.
Wonderful. Mark, welcome.
Hi, and thanks for having us. So about 31 years ago, we founded the Northern Lights family of companies with my business partner who's here with us today as well. And our goal from the beginning was to just tell good stories and hope that they would resonate. And over the years, we maybe did things a little bit unorthodox in the sense that we didn't specialize in one particular area. We in the beginning established the look and feel of shows for MTV. We did a lot of brand content telling stories for shareholder meetings or more corporate type things. And we also did traditional ad agency work. And we always kind of had those cross-pollinate, and that was kind of one of the special things that we brought to it, was we tried to find what resonated with audiences in one area and cross over into the other areas and help inform, with the thinking that audiences are audiences. Sometimes they get a little bit too segmented, and audiences are people, and people have things that they like and things that work. And we try to apply those things to all the things that we make, as dry as they might be originally or as exciting as they might be. So we've done openings to the Super Bowl. We've done some really meaningful nonprofit work. Like I said, we've done network upfronts. But all of the things we tried to infuse with a really strong sense of story, emotion, and echoing kind of what John said a little bit, characters. And so that's what we continue to do this day. We've kind of tried to stay on top of the technology, and moving forward, we've even established a new division recently that's more tech-based, and it's a little bit more of a machine learning product that helps us understand what works a little bit more on a data-driven level as opposed to an intuitive level. And we're using that now to inform all the things that we do to help audiences watch things. As good as the product is, if the audience doesn't watch it, or if you lose them, then that's not good either. So we're trying to move forward with a really enlightened view of what technology is available to us and traditional storytelling principles, which still hold.
Excellent, thank you. And Cory, welcome. Let's run Cory's video.
He gave me a brilliant bit of advice, and it's really practical. He said, you've got to be a good librarian, because what happens is you get lots of musical ideas, and they can be musical motifs. They can be anything from 15 seconds long, a little pattern, to something that's more fleshed out. But you don't always record those songs or develop them. You develop at that time. You develop them when they feel right. But you can forget what you've done.
Oh, yeah.
So you've got to be a good librarian.
Great, Cory, welcome.
Hello, I'm Cory Zechmann. I work on content discovery, content curation, content programming, editorial, whatever you'd like to call it. Originally in music and podcasting and radio, and now I've moved to video streaming. And as the clip kind of talks about, my job is really ingestion of content and trying to understand not just users and not just the creators, but the whole ecosystem. And trying to consume all that is a task that we all kind of have to deal with. But creating that process of being a librarian and figuring out what you should be ingesting, because there's a lot of content that we all tend to ingest and regret it. But being careful and conscious about what we're ingesting and how we can save that and use it for not just the years to come, but longer, and reuse it is really my job, and something that I think is super important, something I'd like to talk about.
Cool, excellent. Well, let's just jump into our challenge, and I'd like to hear from each of you. What do you think the single biggest reason corporate video fails to connect with its audience? Anyone? Thoughts?
I can start. I think it's the reason it fails to connect often is a lack of curiosity combined with too much oversight in messaging. I think we all know that the message is important, and the mark, whatever the approved messaging is, has to be very carefully adhered to. But I think there's still a lot more room than we often give credit for discovery of interesting things within that framework, and the openness to find those things, I think, could improve. A little less prescription and a little more discovery, I think, would help.
Interesting. John or Cory?
I would say that maybe it fails sometimes because we think of it as corporate video, that we shouldn't silo it. I mean, it's tough to get anybody to watch anything. I appreciate the 30 seconds you gave me. If we silo ourselves, and I think we push it aside, or we say, well, it can only be this because it's a corporate video, or it has to have the CEO speaking to camera, or it has to do certain things. I think we're already hitting those roadblocks before we've even begun. And I think if you kind of use like Suzuki's concept of the beginner's mind, which I have to kind of ground myself into, that everything it'd be open to possibility at all stages, and to really kind of do your homework and look at what are all the available stories. And one way I do it, just kind of an exercise, is I think about my screensaver because our screensavers always have on them things, most of us do, like things we think are beautiful or things we want to be reminded of. And we think about the photos we keep alongside of our computer. And why are those two things so separate, right? Like we should always, I think, be trying to get those emotions and the feelings that those screensavers or those photos give us into corporate video. I don't see them as being kind of bifurcated. I see them all as kind of one and the same thing.
And Cory, you look at this a little differently, or do you? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think in ways I look at it different, but also the same, that it's hard for a corporation to have a singular voice. It's pretty unnatural for corporations to be speaking as one person or one entity. There's just so many stakeholders and people who have objectives that kind of muddy up the waters for that overall goal. So I think it's I'm dealing with this now of just having one singular voice and not having everyone's input that is definitely valuable, but needs to be kind of a singular voice to really push through with the noise.
Interesting. Well, let's talk a little bit about maybe the creative and corporate tension. And John, I'm going to pass this one to you. You've described your approach as journalistically rigorous and ethically driven. What does that mean in practice, and how do you actually support that if you have a creative brief that maybe is, well, anyway, why don't you let us know what you think about that?
Sure. I think it's a good question. I think it's about asking questions all the way through and not really being, if a brief is very prescriptive, you've got a problem, I think, right there where it's we have to do this, we have to do this, we have to do that. I just want to, if you're talking about a product, I want to prosecute how that product got there. Who touched it? Where did it start? Who were the people who thought about it? Who made it? Where is it made? Can we go there? Can we take a look at that? If we're thinking about consumers, of course, who are they? How are they? If it's a thing that's already out there, how is it being received? And also, I think, what is the culture at the moment, and how are things being received in the culture at the moment? What is the time in which we're in? That, I think we have to think about that too, and use whatever barometers I think make sense to you to figure that out. But when you do that, I think you go from a place of feeling maybe constricted and suddenly have like abundance, and you say, oh, we've got too many options. Wow, we could do a piece on the people who made the thing. We could do a piece on the people who are using the thing. Just that's what I mean by being rigorous about it, is just kind of giving yourself, and I know that time is always the enemy that we face in our projects. I mean, we always have less time than we want, but I think there's a week or there's at least a few days to say, wait, let's just back up and say, who brought this in? What is the process by which we've arrived to this? What are the assumptions that we're making that we maybe should deconstruct? And as we do that, I think you kind of feel yourself relax a little bit. It's kind of unbuckling like one from your belt and just going, okay, like let's just take this down a little bit and remember the humanity that sits at the core of every single thing we create. When I look at keynotes that like the NVIDIA keynote a few weeks ago was great. The best thing about it was the music, because it made me feel something about the piece. And I thought, well, they really thought about this. They really got into the marrow of where this is all coming from and what it's supposed to make us feel. So even thinking about kind of asking yourself, what is the feeling we're trying to get out of this? What do we want people to feel? That's kind of part of how you can get yourself in there and start to ideate in a way that's going to liberate yourself and not see yourself as having to just make like this piece that we know we have to be. It's like taking a pill at night or something. You feel like, oh, I've got to do this. I never want to have that feeling. I always want to just step back and say, this is an opportunity to ask a lot of questions. As I said, I was an 80s kid, so I'm also like a Mr. Rogers kid. It's like, let's go to the pretzel factory. Like, I'm that kid. So I always just want to know and ask and then bring more information into the area and then throw it around and see what's going to be the most compelling story. I think in relation to, real briefly, the kind of the data preface of the morning, I've been scoring stories for about 20 years and have a database of characters that I actually use on a best of 10 scale that I can rank according to how they work in pieces. And I think you can take that, look at a character in that way, rank them think about them in many different ways. How are they going to come across on the screen? Is there an arc? Is there access? Is there a tension in the story? Making yourself think about those things rather than saying like, oh, we've got to use Bob because Bob invented the thing. Move yourself a little bit past that and say, where is the entry point that is going to really excite the audience and convey the emotion that you're trying to get across?
Great. No, that's good. And Mark, you've got an interesting perspective too, especially if we believe every company now is a media company, right? So people come to you and, they've got their executive leadership, they've got things they want to get across there. Like, how do you handle this even at like the creative brief level? Like, especially like your Marriott piece was beautiful. And I'm sure it took a while to get there, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's important to working with companies to ask good questions and listen first. I mean, you really have to understand so they look at you as an ally and not an adversary. And I'm not here trying to make a movie. I'm not trying to go to Hollywood. I want to make the best thing I possibly can. I mean, I'm on the same side as you, and I want to make the best thing I possibly can for you. So I want to understand what you're trying to achieve first, and then I can best apply our expertise to that and hopefully come out with a winning project. I mean, echoing some of the things you said, I think the principles, if we can guide people to understand that it's the story, if the story sometimes tells you what it wants to be also. The story sometimes starts as one thing, or you think it's one thing. And I learned this years ago in documentary filmmaking even. You start making something, and then if you listen carefully, it kind of tells you what it wants to be. And if you're smart, you listen. Not to the point of a full departure from the brief, but to the point of it helps you shape something that is going to resonate with audiences. Some of that involves asking a lot of the questions that you talked about, and then thinking about it structurally, like what is the story arc here? What's the tension? Is there a cliffhanger? And these things matter more and more now because, I said before, audiences, whether they're a corporate audience or a Super Bowl audience, is just people and their audiences. But these days, if you look at the landscape, audiences have a lot less attention span. So one of the things you have to think about is whatever you do, can you make it work in 6 seconds, in 7 seconds, in 3 seconds? Because if you don't, if there's not a version that works, you're going to lose them. Is there a cliffhanger? Like what types of principles can you apply that will make it work no matter who is looking at it and no matter what format they're trying to consume it on?
No, that's great. Well, what if we shift a little, Cory, if we shift to kind of like AI and the changing landscape now? I'm sure there's a pressure to get, more content faster, better, cheaper. I mean, what are you seeing and how are you evaluating that?
Yeah, so I'm creating demo videos for our products right now, and I'm more of kind of representative of the customer, and I'm working with the creatives to build these demos out. And being able to use like Notebook LM and Gemini to kind of create storyboards to show them what I want rather than them kind of guessing, because a lot of the time I'll be like, this is what leadership wants, this is what I'm thinking of, and then they kind of create something and I'm like, this is not exactly what we want. But being able to use AI to kind of show a little bit more of what we're talking about helps a lot, and being able to kind of both be open to change throughout that process, but also be discerning enough to be like, okay, we need to focus on this. I think AI has helped a lot with kind of the rough drafts.
No, that makes sense. John or Mark, how are you embracing AI, or how are you seeing that changing your creative process?
Well, as I said earlier, we kind of look at it two different ways. We use it as a tool, first of all, just like, nonlinear editing was a tool that revolutionize editing. So we're using it in many ways as a tool, so we can cut faster mats or we can transcribe things faster. So that's one way that we're thinking about it. The other generative way, there's been a lot of controversy, questions about, legality and ethics and so forth. And we were maybe a little bit slow in the beginning to embrace it because of those questions and because our clients, hold us to pretty rigorous standards. But I think we've learned how to embrace what it can add to the process and add to the story without making itself the center of the story kind of thing. And the last thing I would say is what I alluded to earlier. We're actually thinking about AI as, again, part of how the whole world works right now. And if the kind of, we were at CES this year, NAB, and we just got back from Cannes Lion, and one of the common themes across all the big industry shows this year is the creator space, and creators are kind of being dialed into the professional media creation space, which they haven't been as much before. And so embracing and understanding why is that happening and how can we work within that. And a lot of the challenges creators face, what's the best thumbnail? We should probably be thinking about that too. Or what's the hook shot? We should probably be thinking about that too if they're going to be collaborating with us and they're going to be making our media. And so we've developed tools that, like I alluded to earlier, that help with a machine learning model figure those things out in a data-driven way that's not subjective, it's objective, that can help make sure that the audience, you get an audience and they stay.
Oh, that's good advice. John, any thoughts there?
I'd just say so far for research, it's just a dream, and I'm able to get down and figure things out a lot faster now than I was 6 months ago, and that's great. I know it's going to affect post-production in ways that Mark is probably more familiar with than me, with color grading and assistant editing and certain things of that I think are on the way. They're showing up and they're going to be helpful in a lot of ways. Rough drafts, those kinds of things, even the voiceover that we were talking about, that as a rough draft, that could be great. So I'm optimistic about that.
Cool. Well, let's talk about reimagining kind of the whole storytelling process. Is there any, like, maybe give an example of like something that broke the mold or something that you worked on that you're proud of that maybe is a little different here or should be, or something to think about for the future?
I'll cite a guy from Cupertino who I like. I've never met, but I'd love to. Mohammed Gorjestani's work on Lyft, which was really beautiful. If you have a chance to just see the Lyft campaign from a couple years back, which foregrounded the drivers and talked about why they drive Lyft, and they're mostly immigrant stories, and they're about people working their way up and hustling in the world. And it was a really brave decision by Lyft to do that and not look past it and say, look, this is what fundamentally who we are. And I think that's a lot of the message I try to get into all the client work we do. Really look at who we are, what we are, the world around us, reflecting that world. I think when brands do that, when they lean into that more, when they don't try to put too much gloss on things and they allow the camera to bounce around a little bit, and we get to see the family at home, and we get to see the world in which they live is also the world in which we live. That's like as close to a bullseye as you can get. So if you ever check out, I'd compliment Mohammed and hope to meet him someday and buy him a drink because he's done some great work.
There you go. That's great. Thank you.
We had a really interesting project once. It's interesting. You started out by mentioning something about time and the time constraints. And I always think back to this project we did several years ago for Microsoft, and it was a customer story. So it started out life as a traditional customer story, like here's a customer using Microsoft products, let's tell the story. And by the time we were done with it, we kind of crafted it into a series, a 5-part series, 2 minutes each, where each one had the things I was talking about earlier. It had something at stake. You weren't sure, and they were open to this, which was odd. Was this actually going to work? We left off some of that, but it wasn't just like, and this is amazing, and now this is even more amazing, and this is even amazinger. There were cliffhangers. There were questions whether, is this going to work? Who are these people? What's motivating them? And it was a fascinating series. It actually was way more engaging than a traditional, normal customer story. It actually won a few awards, even inside Microsoft. And I always think back to that as a great example of them being open to really tell a story with cliffhangers, with things at stake, and not everything wrapped up in a nice bow.
Yeah, I like that, pushing the boundaries. That's always worked for me. Cory.
So I've run a music blog for 16 plus years, and it's always, most of my promotion has been on audio, like Spotify, SoundCloud, these kind of things. And it's been hard for me to break into video because I don't have video. But generative AI has helped me just as really more of an educational, being able to work with video and edit it using CapCut. I haven't used video editing in probably 10 years, and I was using Adobe Premiere in college and high school, but now I'm like able to just have video for me to cut up and use, and it is more of an educational thing than anything, but it allows my music blog to be on TikTok, to be on Instagram Reels, so that I can get exposure there as well.
Oh, that's great. Well, as we wrap, we have about 4 minutes. So just if you could give one piece of advice to folks in this room about what they should be thinking about for storytelling in the future, what would it be? And I know that Marty and Robin really want us to kind of solve this storytelling challenge, which we're getting good headway here starting it. And again, all of these folks are available during the breaks and that. Be sure to talk to them. But let's wrap strong. And John, your one piece of advice?
Okay. Move away from the montage. Good. Montages that have a story in them are a purpose, but I think we're at a place in audience behavior now where we're not wowed by a bunch of things that are in a row with a lot of music. I'll say like SpaceX has some beautiful ads, but there are a lot of rockets shooting off, and more rockets, more rockets, more rockets. Like, move away from that. I'd say look for people. Exalt the people, exalt the stories. If you're opening a conference, tell a story rather than just splashing a lot of music and images on the screen. And also involve your C-suite from the start, so they understand the impetus of why you're doing what you're doing, so you don't get that note when you're almost done that says, I don't like it, and you have to go back and redo it. Share why you're doing it and how you're doing it early, and make sure that goes as far up the chain as possible to know who every single person in that review process is going to know the thought behind it, not just receive the media as such and then tell you to redo it.
Yeah,
that'll save you some
that's
trouble.
great. Yeah, bring them along on the journey. Mark, that's good.
I would say my biggest principle that I say to everyone, whether you're making a video or a presentation or anything, is think of the poor audience. Think of the poor audience. What would you want to watch this? Think of the people that are forced to watch it, or that have to take their time to watch it. And wherever you are in the process, if it's notes coming in, if you're shooting something, put yourself in their shoes and think about how you can make it better for them, or how you might want to consume it if you were sitting in that audience and you were forced to sit through it. And I think that can help inform better content overall.
Excellent. And Cory, you get the last word here.
I would say be open but discerning. I think a good example is with AI. Like, I'm dealing with so much AI slop in music right now, and trying to discern, is this AI or is this not? But also finding that there's not a lot right now, but some really good music that is AI generated. It's just there's 90, instead of 1% of content being good, now it's 0.1% of content being good. But it's actually a lot more content, so it's a lot more good content. So be open but discerning.
There you go. And that's a wrap. My clock says 10:29, so I think we did it.
Well,
thank you all.
Let me ask maybe questions.
Sure.
Room for one or two questions.
Sure.
Anybody there? I'll kick it off. Just let me ask a question, okay? Because there are a lot of engineer tech folks in the audience. How do you normally work with them? How do you like to communicate to people who are with an engineering side of things, state of mind? What kind of gear or tools would you like to see? So let's bridge the gap between creative and technology for 1 second. John, you want to start it out?
I would just say to make sure that those guys are in the room at some point, other than when you show up to do the show. Just one phone call from creative to production can spot troubles, answer their questions. Sometimes I'm in the booth, though I maybe don't need to be, or just to walk through people with the show, ask if they have any questions, hear the engineer folks. Just make sure, in other words, if you're on the technical side, be interrogative with those creative people. I mean, we're all the same team. So if there's questions about why something is coming together, and also I appreciate the chance to show creative to engineering, as if I have just one extra day or something and I can say, what do you think? Like, it's one more set of eyes on something is really valuable. So I would just say, try to get all in the room before, like, the day before the show, and maybe troubleshoot things and maybe see things from each other's perspective.
If you can get a smile from an engineer, you know it's good, right?
I would just, with one thing, I work with a lot of engineers and love doing so, and really help them with creatives and being able to set expectations and what's possible. But on the flip side, having engineers and being allowed for them to allow for expanding possibilities. There's a lot of the times I am trying to set expectations to marketing or creative of like what we can do. But on the flip side, it is about telling or getting engineers to be excited about other possibilities that aren't available at the moment.
One of the biggest challenges we're facing now, we're working on a project where the client has multi-seasons, multi-episodes of these shows that we're supposed to ingest, and it's almost physically impossible with our current infrastructure. But it is possible if we have that conversation, which we're doing now with the engineering team, and we figure out what we can do and how we can do it and make it work. And I think being open to that, not being like, this must be this and go figure out how I can have full res all this times all this, but to say, well, how could we achieve this together is a really good way to think about it.
There you go. Well, thank you all. I appreciate it. And be sure to chat with these gentlemen. They're definitely professionals and have great ideas. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.